Welcome to the Motion workshop. This is the first workshop that we're actually having around motion. And we'll just present three short presentations. One presentation by Marlon. Then there's going to be a short moment if there's a quick question or if there's someone who wants to ask something. Then we continue with Jeanne. Jeanne is going to present some slides and some concepts. And then we have another short Q&A in between if there needs for clarifications. And then I'll present after it a short introduction about an imaginary artist called Abraham Kelly. And then after this, we'll do a Q&A, and then there will be more time also if there's other persons that want to intervene or present or have other questions. And then there will be some other time if you want to discuss later on. There will be a future residency somewhere in the summertime. And then the event of Exquisite Male 1.2 will continue. No further ado. I think if everybody is ready, then we will start with Marlon.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Marlon Barrios Solano, and I'm going to try in the next 8 minutes to present, to all of us, whoever is here present. There is Genzi appearing here. So, hello. And so I will present just a project that that in a way have sparked a lot of research for me. In the last 4 years, I actually became involved or fascinated by cryptocurrencies, because also it was by need, by necessity. I am from Venezuela. My mother and family, some of them still lives in Venezuela. So then there was no way of sending money. I live in the United States, and I just needed to, someone told me, oh, there is this, you can send Bitcoin. So well, directly that became this connection with an urgency that was directly grounded in the materiality of certain precarious situations. That's one part. So that's kind of a background. So then I became fascinated by the technological changes. One of the things that I think that is also important is that I also always been fascinated by networks and the connection of networks with certain aspect of what is understood as complexity theory, or the understanding of complex systems. So in that sense, okay, people keep arriving. So I'm gonna see if I can give you. I'm gonna give you the Stef, right?
Yeah, I'll take care of it. Just continue.
Yes, the host. Okay, so you will be the host. All right. So, all right. So then, in that sense, that became very important, networks. And the other important part of the background is that as an artist, my practice evolved from being a dancer, a professional dancer, to work with social networks, almost like a deployment of this kind of beautiful global choreography and of a community of practice. So I created a website that is called dancetech.net, that when I actually learned about the blockchain, I think that is very interesting. It was very interesting for me that it went from, I'm going to use terms that may need unpacking. What it was, the Web 2.0, historically, it was, oh my God, the web or the internet became interactive. We all can respond to posts. We can actually, literally this open kind of utopia and dystopia that we live right now. So it was called in the 2006, the Web 2.0. So then with the beginning of the creation of the blockchain, I think that some of the important things that start happening is that the internet became the internet of value. So then content and value started to be transacted, in a way that was very safe. So there will be many things that probably, we need to unpack over there. But I think that's honestly what I saw, that the working with a blockchain and creating some kind of network or developing the social network that already existed to a network that can actually transact value with cryptocurrencies, or afforded by the cryptocurrencies, became really feasible in a way. So then I'm just gonna then share the screen and show the page in the website in danstech.net where the project Motion DAO, or Motion, let's just call it, the creation of some kind of cryptoeconomic framework, lives. So this is the website. And then it has, this is the logo. And then one of the important things that I want to actually play for you is this video that also became really important. I think it's just 1 minute, a minute and a half. And probably I have to come back, sorry, because I think I have to choose share sound. And it has some questions that I consider a little bit of history of this kind of utopic vision, but it was very important for me, and I hope that you enjoy it. Just let me know if you hear it.
It started simple.
You can hear it?
A token, a symbol of hard work, of skills, for trust between people. Money was meant to be exchanged for things created and services provided. It takes many forms, both plain and shiny, honoring leaders of the past and those leading us into the future. Somewhere we lost our way. People waged wars over it, big and small, concerned more with growing interest on $244 trillion in debt than growing communities. And many people are left out. 1.7 billion invisible, left behind and underserved. But what if money were more accessible to everyone? A universal symbol for essential needs, for empowerment and connection. People, communities, entire countries prospering. What if money were all of this? What if money were beautiful?
Okay, trying to do this. So that question, what if money were beautiful? So that is something that for me became very, very important. So like in a way, it was like, it tapped the aspect of the cryptocurrencies, but with a very deep questions, in relationship, like, what is beauty? And at the same time, the very important aspect of how can we make, how this becomes a relationship for me between beauty and ethics. So then it became like this really important aspect of, it's like how then this project that has this kind of that it has a social network probably can be, I can have these leading questions here. Can money be beautiful? Can money be programmed? Can money have program ethics? And this is actually, can money be programmed? A really important aspect of the innovation of the blockchain. and the Ethereum, the networks that have been created. Can money have program ethics? How can we use crypto, and this, how can we use crypto economic frameworks to question and inquire about the fundamental architecture, dynamics, and ethics of contemporary economic system? This is a huge question that probably also Jeanne would address, or it will take some from that. We can explore can we explore the innovation potential of blockchain technology to develop a sustainable economy within the international digital arts economy? So, and then I want to, of course, then this imply that an enormous task of trying to understand what is an economic system. And that's what I call, like, I pull the thread and I pull the rug of myself, and then start to inviting people to this inquiry in which, like, Jeanne and Stef responded. And we had been getting together for the last 8 months, I think, more or less, 8 months. And thinking about these problems. So then, in a way, the tactics that are already here is there is a social network like this, then there is a digital social network, a platform. Then a very important aspect is tokens. What is a token? The tokenization of a crypto actual money. So then there exists. I engage in creation of a token that exists and is a cryptocurrency. In this case, dedicated to the possible flow of values that we will create. Then another part, and this is crucial right now, is how the impact of all this technology, what is the impact of all this technology in governance? So then there is something that's called DAOs, or DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations, that are a very important aspect. And here you can see that these are all hyperlinks with all these definitions. And then I start to having the possibility to create the money and hopefully that the money can go viral and be peer-to-peer. So then there is this very clear aspect of the implication, not of my or this project, is the actual innovation, the possibility of having decentralized finance processes. And of course, that very well kind of known now that most everybody have heard about the NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. So there are a lot of things here that can be used, of course, as a resource. So I would put this in the description of the video. It will be also sent to you. This is the link. And then that's kind of the ongoing question. I think that's it. I'm out of time, Steph, isn't it? Kind of. Yeah, so what I would like to...
Yeah, like a couple of minutes.
Can I go with a couple of minutes? Yeah? Or I'm beyond couple of minutes. I'm practically done. I'm just really want to thank, the Artists Commons from Brussels to create literally this help us to create this very first coming out, talking about pride, right? So in a way, proudly coming out with a project that it has the very high complex stakes, I would say, and things that we are engaging ourselves as artists, researchers, and I really thank also Steph and Jeanne for being here.
I'm very interested to raise and start to formulate some answers and solutions to a question that I face as an artist, but I'm not the only one. Also, many other artists have difficulties to develop sustainable economy of their production, and especially when you work in interdisciplinary art and research. So what I'm trying to present now, and to answer to this question, does the mass production model apply to the production of subjectivities? Can we think of a framework that would facilitate interdisciplinary art and research production And would a cryptocurrency such as motion help build a common ground for collaboration? And the problem with production of subjectivities, which is what artists do, is that it doesn't benefit from cost savings of mass production. Mass production saves cost not only because of economies of scale, but also thanks to the identicality of products and their use, which lowers the possibilities for harshness and bumps and creative interactions, confrontation between people owning and using in similar ways the same goods. In a sense, mass production leads to mass hypnosis. So, however, like living ecosystem, interdisciplinary art productions enriches and disseminates numerous environments throughout their life cycle and until their death, which itself constitutes a ground for new projects. So the next slide, please. So no, this is not the next slide. Yes. I suggest a new budget model for a sustainable economy of art production and artistic labor compensation, the dynamic energy budget for art creation. This model values the process rather than the end product. It considers the production timeline as a cycle rather than a linear chain of actions, which are visually represented, as you can see, like if all expenses and incomes happen in a single point in time, in a single instant. Therefore, because of this cycle, it includes time as a dynamic factor to the budget model. For example, the resources that you get at the beginning of the project add value throughout the entire cycle, while the resources given at the end of the creation cycle brings less additional value to the existing project. This model is inspired by nature's ecosystems rather than consumerism. And the blockchain and motion tokens can help creating a single space and dedicated ecosystem in support of an interdisciplinary artistic project, overcoming institutionalized norm. Next slide, please. The slide before. More specifically, this new budget model for a sustainable economy of art production is inspired by the Deb theory for metabolic organization used as a framework for modeling metabolism at the organism level by Dr. Bas Koosman, who is a Dutch professor of theoretical biology. A dynamic energy budget theory is a formal theory for the uptake and use of substrates, food, nutrients, and light by organisms and their use for maintenance, growth, maturation, and propagation. It applies to all organisms, microorganisms, animals, and plants. The primary focus is at individual level from a life cycle perspective, with many implications for sub and supra-individual levels. So what can we expect by designing a dynamic budget for artistic creation? First, it recognizes value creation along the creative process instead of placing all the value at the end of the cycle. Second, it highlights the concept of substrates, energy, resources in place of incomes and connects them directly to the ongoing creation of value. In a metabolic environment, energy and other resources are processed and transformed rather than lost. And third, as a result, it disconnects resources, incomes from expenses or costs. And interestingly, when looking at the etymology of cost, you extract and you understand a creative value that is lost today to this word. Cost comes from the Old French cost, which means hardship and trouble. And the adjective coste in Old French means with sides offer harshness. The confrontation at the side, I mean the creative value of interaction, basically. So interactions between heterogeneous entities is where frictions happen. By valuing interactions, such as meeting, presentation, workshop, along the process of creation, as opposed to the objects of consumer culture, we propose a financial tool closer to life closer to art, which supports the process rather than a single outcome, which would be the piece of art. So next slide, the fourth and the fifth, please. Participation tickets for the art and science performance and the interactive installation process are already on OpenSea. You can very soon we will accept payment in motion tokens. In the meantime, you can still buy them with Ethereum. And if you're interested by this model, it's also at your disposal, and I can share it with you. Voilà. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeanne. Now I would like to present a short version of what I've been doing in regard to the motion. So yeah, as you see, we've been like working for a while, and the original idea, and of course there's like many things which we're just starting at, and there will be a lot of developments, but more about this later. So from my personal interest, what I really find interesting about a blockchain technology, and especially this kind of distributed ledger that it embodies, a kind of accounting, a kind of transparent accounting, something that cannot be deleted and can be publicly accessed. This I find personally very interesting. And of course, I'd like to relate this to a small physical space, because there's a lot of digital things happening. And I started to think about how can a physical space be part of the Internet of Things? Like how can the space itself, like a gallery space, a presentation space, instead of creating now I'm working with an ISBL of Smart, the cooperative Smart. But then I started to think like, what else could there be? So I've been thinking about like, how can the space or the residency of a space, how can an artist present work in a non-curated space? So this is a bit what Res Gauche is about. So this is a bit I'm very much into Slavoj Žižek, how it can be different from a curated space, so that the curator is not the person who validates the artwork, but that it actually becomes part of a blockchain, meaning the artwork validates itself by being an artwork, and the middleman is kind of missing there, which is in my research toward commons and person-to-person protocols, always the question of how can you get the middleman out of the way? So how can the curator not be necessary? And of course, yeah, there's much more. It's not like a golden solution to everything. It's also not a commercial space, so how to stay out of the commercial market logic. And also how to have a more resilient form than like subsidized spaces, especially now with the crisis, the global crisis for a couple of years now. A lot of funding has been cut, and then if the theaters close or they end the funding, then the spaces close and the artists are without a job. So, and then also I was thinking about like, yeah, what happens to all these squats and temporary occupations? Like a lot of it is about gentrification. So a lot of artists or very precarious persons, if they invest a lot of their means into certain spaces, often it's other people who benefit from that. So this is a bit the question of like how to develop something which is different than this. Yeah, like I'll go a bit faster. So there's on the website, you can go to Res Gauche, and then you'll find in the news, you'll find the posts there. So yeah, here is more information about the project proposal. This is posted on the interplanetary file system, which is a new form. It's a bit like Arweave. It's a kind of perma-web. So it's also a blockchain technology. The nice thing about these things is like once you post something there, even if Google doesn't like it, they cannot take it offline. It's a kind of web that you cannot censor. So the interplanetary file system, they started to do a copy of Wikipedia of Turkey at the moment that the Turkish government was starting to censor part of Wikipedia. So it's a kind of new form of making sure that whatever you put on the internet stays on the internet and it's a public internet. So that's a bit like what I'm interested in. Okay, I'll just move on now fast to, okay, what's going on artistically speaking? There's Abraham Kelly, which is, I could say it's my alter ego since I'm normally a performer, dancer, artistic researcher. There wasn't an audience, so I started making paintings. There's an exhibition happening from Abraham Kelly, which is this imaginary artist that you can visit. And I started to think about what does it mean to make physical artworks. So there is a physical space with physical artworks, like analog. And then I thought about like, okay, let's turn them into digital artworks. So these are the digital versions of those artworks. This is on OpenSea. OpenSea is basically the largest NFT non-fungible token, meaning tokens that you cannot, the same as with the interplanetary file system. It's basically a code which is non-corruptible. It's sellable, but you cannot transfer that code. So it's kind of an authentic digital work. So that's also a way that a lot of digital art is being authenticated. It can be copied, but the original ownership stays with the person who owns it. The nice thing about this for artists, especially visual artists, if you sell a painting, for instance, if I would sell this painting, now I'm selling it in Amplefort, which is a elastic finance currency. That's a rebasing currency. That's a whole other thing. But basically what happens if this piece gets resold, so if it sells once and then it gets resold, normally a visual artist there, they lose, like the art market will make money on it. In this case, there's actually a percentage that goes back to the artist. So you can put a royalty of 10%. And every time your work is resold, if you sell it the first time at €1, you get like 10 cents. If that person who bought your work sells it for 10,000, well, you get 10% of that 10,000. So it's a very interesting form to think about what the visual arts, also music, video clips, all the other forms that now are mostly being managed by the streaming services. So this is a bit like how to work as an artist to come into another economy. Soon these artworks will be also available to be sold within the motion currency. And to end here, because I think I'm almost over time. So I started to think about, there's just a technical thing, is like the Ethereum network. Ethereum is kind of a supercomputer. It's quite different from Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a kind of specific protocol that has a limited supply. Ethereum is more like an open source kind of foundational form with known persons behind it. And it's kind of has a problem nowadays that it's too popular. So to actually use the Ethereum network, often the fees to make a transaction on that world computer is quite high. So I started to think like, what happens if we need to make a low cost transaction and you don't have a lot of money as an artist? So this is something which is quite still being developed in a very initial phase, because these persons, they've been thinking about the same problem. So it's called mintbase.io. It's basically where you can make an NFT or where you can put your web shop. And they're not using Ethereum anymore because it became too expensive to use Ethereum for. Maybe in 2 years when the new Ethereum is out there and it will use a different structure, so the fees will be less. But for this moment, it's kind of a transition moment. So they switched to a Near. Near is basically a different blockchain with much lower costs, and the transactions are very instantaneous. So I started to also build an alternative with Mint-based to also have a version in the near tokens. So that's what I've been doing. I didn't sell anything yet. I'm not making any money of this, and it actually cost quite a lot of money to put those things on there. But this is kind of my research, and of course, I'm very interested how it can go more and more towards like the dance tech ecosystem and how we can integrate those things within the token. So I think that's my presentation, and I'd like to open up the remainder of the time to a Q&A.
Thank you. That was awesome. Yeah. So any questions from? You know, there are, what I'm going to answer is, this is right now we are kind of early adopters relatively to some of this framework. For me, it's very important to think about a framework, and then there are a basic process of tokenization. One that can be a token that can be like trading money, and the other kind of token that is unique, that is fungible and non-fungible. So then during any kind of social system, we have ways of generating value. So then that is a very important question. Not only what kind of work that people will exchange or the tickets, essentially what is the actual value that is traded and people is willing to do something for it or pay something. So then the process of tokenization need to understand first what are the value flows in the system. So and in those value flows, you need to kind of research labor. You need to understand what are the resources, what are the external financial supports. So there are a lot of aspects there, and then we can think about the market not as this terrible thing. It's actually, you understand the value flow that happens in what also Jeanne was presenting. You understand the process, and in that process there can be many, many, many things, but it needs to be visualized first. And because literally we don't even think about it. Okay, there is this money that is fiat currency, and then we go. But there is definitely, I am in conversation with that, just to finish, with Tanzing August in Germany for next year as a festival to start using motion. So then that will be a lot of things to think about, This is our first coming out, really, but first. So then we will start doing with the network, with the Dance Tech Network members or whoever, monthly meetings. So, and that's what, we are all invited to keep thinking about this as a parallel process. And then there are aspects. One of the main aspects is that probably the factors of prosperity in an economy have to do with possibility of actually issuing the token. So that is actually a really interesting thing that I would like to experiment with, that there is a huge aspect, that possibility of saying, well, people in dance tech, for example, in the network, if they apply to a basic universal income for a year, they can actually be paid 1,000 motions per year. But of course, that also, that is a possibility. So there will be, what I'm trying to, and we will be deciding together, is what are going to be the distribution mechanisms of the token.